The CX-50 and RAV4 are rugged presenting two-row SUVs. However, they clash in several key areas. So today I'm going to help you and myself decide which one is better. Briefly, if you enjoy fun, detailed car content without fluff, then please subscribe and hit the bell for notifications. It may seem small, but it's pivotal in helping me get more cars to review. The Mazda CX-5 was originally the car suited to go against the RAV4. I think that when we look at the price, the personality that it's trying to convey, and its people-hauling capabilities, the CX-50 is a closer competitor to the RAV, and therefore making the choice between these two less clear-cut. As a value proposition, most new SUVs make less sense than a broken coin machine. Still, the Mazda is impressive for the money. It comes standard with all-wheel drive, but is priced like the more Spartan front-drive RAV. When fully optioned, a turbo CX-50 and hybrid RAV4 hit about $43,000 US. Though another thing I should point out, Mazda is not making any base models or the preferred trim. This is the preferred plus. They just now started making the select, so you'll see that kind of coming up in the next few months. So really that means that the base price for a long time has been about $34,000. Though you do get quite a few features for that cost, and a lot of RAV4s are that expensive anyway. Both of these will come with LED projector headlights as standard. The RAV4 does offer fog lights, whereas that's not an option on the CX-50. Though this comes standard with rain-sensing windshield wipers, something that is not standard on any RAV4. On both of them, if you skip the base trim, you'll get proximity unlock and lock, and they both offer a 360 view camera if you go for the high trims. The CX-50 does get a leg up in styling points with standard 17-inch alloys on the base trim, whereas you'll get hubcaps on the cheapest RAV4. You can also get 20-inch wheels with the Mazda, and if you equip it as such, you will have 8.6 inches of ground clearance, a number that is identical to what you will find in the Toyota. If you plan on camping or going up some steep driveways, your approach angle in the Toyota is going to be slightly better than the Mazda, but around back, the CX-50 has less overhang. Both of these will have a power rear gate on a majority of trims. While style is all personal preference, I prefer the premium yet outdoorsy CX-50 with its chunky nose and wide body stance. I also appreciate that the RAV4 manages to look good in the street attire of the sporty SE and XSE and the rugged outfits of the TRD Off-road and Adventure. There's more flavors to the Toyota, and there's also more space. Though the cargo area of the Mazda CX-50 is respectable because of its length and how you have cargo-mounted rear seat releases, it's nowhere near as tall or wide as the cavernous RAV4. Truly, the Toyota offers the practicality of that duffel bag of a purse your mom used to carry. Before I hop inside, I'd like to thank Royal South Toyota and Royal South Mazda in Bloomington, Indiana for letting me test drive many cars over the years. The staff are friendly and they are dedicated to the community. Check them out and tell them thanks for me. Inside the RAV4, the interior seems to be tailored more toward taking abuse than impressing your passengers. I say this in part because of the materials, so harder touch plastics, especially on the lower parts. There's no padding for your knees or anything, but you also have these really grippy climate controls that are kind of large. It does have pretty good storage levels. Okay sized door pockets, a compartment above the glove box and the driver's left knee. You get the sense that it's a practical place to be. There are definitely more impressive looking cabins with bigger wow factors, including the CX-50 in my opinion. But you do have kind of a soft touch dashboard going on, a little bit of contrast stitching, and the theme changes depending on which trim, because you do have things like the sporty SE and XSE, the off-road oriented Adventure, TRD Off-road, and new Woodland trim for 2023. That also means that there's a large difference in features. If you go with the LE, you'll just have cloth upholstery, single zone automatic climate control. For 2023, you have a new infotainment system. It's a very straightforward setup, good resolution, decent response time, though after buying a Corolla myself, the user setup is a little annoying. But I do like the fact that it comes with wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto as standard. The base models get an 8-inch screen, but a 10.5-inch one is available. Also on the base, you're gonna find cloth seats. Step up to the XLE Premium. You'll get Toyota's faux leather soft text. You'll have features like a heated steering wheel, heated seats available on most trims. You can actually get ventilated front seats too, along with a nice punchy JBL sound system with a subwoofer in the back. You'll have an adequate 6 speakers standard. My only beef with the RAV4's option list is that many of the amenities are only optional at a price that is already undercut by the Mazda. Considering you're not afraid of the cost, you can get niceties like a full digital gauge cluster. Others get a smaller display like the Mazda. You can also get a head-up display, wireless charger, regular sunroof, or a panoramic one. Where I'm less impressed with the RAV4 would be the seats. They tend to fatigue my legs a little quickly. The bottom support here just isn't that great, but at least you have lumbar adjustment on all except the base. A large amount of people will find them agreeable, but very few will find them cozy. Hopping in the back though, at 6'3", I have plenty of space. Again, not overly contoured to my body, but it's big, and that's what a lot of families or people with big friends will really care about. Plus, every RAV4 comes with rear vents. Surprisingly, I think the CX-50 beats the RAV4 though when it comes to that comfort aspect in the back seat, because at my height, I still have just enough knee room and just enough headroom to fit, which is good on its own, but it also has seats that are a little bit further away from the floor, so I have a touch better thigh support. The rear doors also swing out wider, making it easier to remove a child or child seat. And you still have rear vents on every trim except for the base. There are 2 aspects that are worse, and that would be the windows. I think they're just smaller. It makes the whole area feel just a little bit more claustrophobic, and it does feel more skinny. The middle seat is usable. Still, this bucks the trend set by basically every other 2-row Mazda. Up front, this is going to be very familiar for the brand. It doesn't have as much storage as the RAV4, but there are still a couple nice cubbies, large door pockets, a cool split center console, and your elbow rests are very softly padded. And you do also have like nicer looking soft touch materials spread out on the dash. And if you step up to higher trims, you have nicer stitching and accenting, but not the best that the brand has to offer. And you also don't get any sort of soft touch components for where your knees rest. Neither of these offer a whole lot of wiggle room for your knees, so you're really going to be forced to rest them on plastic if you're tall. The CX-50 is more upscale with the feel and the ambiance, especially with the panoramic sunroof. I do like that this also incorporates a lot of like analog buttons and stuff, and here I think they're more satisfying. The dials have a louder click to them, and you're actually controlling this display here with a control center down here where your hand naturally lies. A lot of people are going to be adverse to this, but me personally, I've gotten used to it and I like it. When I'm driving, I don't have to lift a finger, but I do think that they could rework this UI because a few things take a couple extra steps. But at the very least, wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto are standard, as is an 8.8-inch screen. Skip the base and you'll have a 10.3-inch unit. As for the seats, the Select trim makes them heated up front with leatherette bolsters and cloth inserts that also make the cushions feel nearly waterproof. The Preferred adds lumbar adjustment. The Premium makes them leather, but adds an awkward center seam. The seats are not too well contoured. They'll likely feel snug if you don't have a slender build, and they're a bit firm. But after being in them for around an hour, I find them to be more supportive than what's in the RAV4, but truly I don't think either of these have seats that are very well liked. On the road, there's a huge difference in philosophy between the CX-50 and the RAV4. Both of these are going to have 2.5-liter inline fours. Here in the Mazda, I'm going to have direct injection only. It makes 187 horsepower and 186 pound-feet of torque. This is a proven engine in the Mazda lineup, though it's not an overly potent one. 0 to 60 came up in 9.2 seconds when I tested it earlier. It's a very slow shift there, as though others have gotten that to the mid-8s. Either way, response in here is adequate. It doesn't seem too stressed out. The only thing is sometimes it jumps for first gear with an unexpected amount of vigor, and then other times it can be a little unsure of which gear it needs. And though this 6-speed automatic is standard on all CX-50s, you can get a turbocharged option if you do want more oomph. The forced induction models make 310 pound-feet of torque on regular fuel and up to 256 horsepower if you throw premium in it, though it runs perfectly fine on regular. With 87 octane in it, I managed 0 to 60 in 6.9 seconds. The shifts are still pretty slow from the 6-speed auto. The bigger story there with that engine is how it feels almost naturally aspirated. There's a very little amount of turbo lag because it uses a special valve. And for what I like to believe is due to the added torque, the transmission feels more sure of itself with that engine. And it provides phenomenal passing power. I'd recommend the turbo if you want an upscale experience or if you live at high altitude. The naturally aspirated engine should be good otherwise. I don't think you're gonna really have any issues getting this up to highway speed. And once you're there, revving just a hair above 2,000 RPMs, it's not super quiet in here, but I don't find it offensive, especially with the 18-inch wheels. Mazdas are known for their handling prowess, and that is definitely the case with the CX-50. I'll put the transmission in sport mode. Still not a super quick to react vehicle, but the steering on the other hand is very natural feeling. It's got some heft to it for a small SUV if you like that kind of thing. There's a faint but present amount of communication coming through the wheel. Body roll is pretty well kept. You can make, corrections midway through a corner, and it's reactive, though the steering itself is kind of slow and very predictable and natural feeling. And what I mean by that is it's tight on center without any darty tendencies. Your inputs are met with little delay, and it communicates some of what the front end is doing back to you. Taking it around corners with any sort of imperfections in here, even though you do not have independent rear suspension, it does a good job managing itself. And it feels pretty in control, very confident vehicle, so long as the road isn't too choppy. Where the CX-50 has a little bit harder time is going to be on really tattered roads. I wouldn't call it unforgiving, it's not dampened to be too stiff, but if there's like constant bumps, the rear end does become a little bit more jittery than a lot of competitors. So if you live around roads that receive less attention than the middle child, maybe go with the RAV4. Though this ride quality is far from a deal breaker for me personally. Another big piece to the puzzle here is standard all-wheel drive, which one, helps this become a better value in a lot of cases, but two, makes it pretty capable. All of them will have an off-road mode that uses the brakes to help divert power side to side, and it seems to be pretty effective. Now, it still can only send 50% of torque to the rear wheels, but compared to the Toyota RAV4, it seems to do a better job at actually getting it over obstacles. The upper trim non-hybrid RAVs actually have a torque vectoring rear diff, which seems to help in icy conditions or trail riding, but off-road, the Toyota still struggles with cutting power from what I've seen. All-wheel drive is also just an option on most non-hybrid RAVs. At least the TRD has a front skid plate, so I'd say the field is pretty level between these two. Still, I'd suggest a Forester for the person that wants a more capable off-roadish crossover. Either one of these for snow, you're fine. Seeing out of the CX-50 is not a daunting thing, but it isn't as transparent as a lot of competitors. You kind of have a higher belt line here. It's not as closed off as a Mazda CX-30. I don't think this dashboard is too high, but you do get this overwhelming sense that the car is larger than it really is, which I see as making it feel more sporty, but to others less approachable. And really the most notable thing to me jumping out of the CX-50 into the RAV4 is the driving position and the visibility. The windshield feels closer, the dash lower, the belt line is also dropped down a few inches. Those with a trained eye will notice that this is a 2022 as it does not have the new infotainment. The 2023 I drove last week wasn't available for today's review, but this will drive the same. Let's talk about these powertrains. Again, 2.5 liter naturally aspirated inline 4 as standard. That's going to make 203 horsepower, and that, guys, you'll be paired up with an 8-speed automatic. And the performance from that is okay. They initially had big tuning issues with those, but since then they've worked on it. It still doesn't particularly like to downshift, but for the most part, it's smooth, it shifts a little quicker than the Mazda, and it's very efficient. Nothing to write home about. When it comes to 0-60, I got 8.1 seconds. decent performance off the line, making it a little bit more spry than the CX-50, though in the real world, the power band kind of limits the thing. You really need to rev it out in order to feel the difference over a vehicle like the Mazda. I think the base 2.5 liter for most people, they will find it to be sufficient in all regards, including passing power, just not relaxed when you demand more from it. And it will also vocalize its disdain for you. I'm ignoring the rare plug-in hybrid RAV4 Prime for this video, but that is also an option that Mazda does not offer for the CX-50. I think the hybrid powertrain makes this much more refined. It has a great response to it. You have the electric motor to kind of fill in the gaps that's left by the 2.5 liter engine, and you have an eCVT, which uses a separate electric motor to change the ratios very fast. I think the CX-50 does have more thrust overall, but since that has to take a very long time to shift and it takes a little bit to get into the power band, they are identical when it comes to the numbers. The hybrid also comes with standard all-wheel drive via a separate rear electric motor. Again, good for snow, not for powering over obstacles. It can take off from a halt very well too, but its 219 ponies get more winded past 60 than the turbo CX-50. However, Toyota lets you get the hybrid in a base LE, whereas you have to spend over 38 grand to get the higher output engine in the Mazda. Though if you're the type of person who buys one used, or you keep it like 15 years, you'll probably have to replace the battery. The hybrid also gets about 10 miles to the gallon better than the regular gas RAV4s, which already handily beat the Mazda CX-50 when it comes to efficiency. So if you're looking for the lowest possible running cost, the RAV4 definitely wins. Really, this thing gets up to speed very well. And once you do get to 65 miles per hour, I think the CX-50 may be a little bit quieter when it comes to wind noise, but the RAV4 is a little bit quieter when it comes to engine noise. It's about a wash to my ears with road noise, but I think the higher trim CX-50s have louder tires. Where the RAV4 loses some definite ground to the CX-50 is going to be on back roads like this. The steering here just feels very disconnected. It's lighter than the CX-50, and it also makes this just an easier car to drive. Plus, there's no faulting it when the road gets rough, though the numbness keeps it from being engaging. Body roll is under control with the RAV4. Driving on roads that are neglected, you're going to have a noticeably more forgiving experience than what's in the CX-50. I'm going over these bumps. While not the smoothest car around, it takes them on the chin and it maintains a refined ride. You can get a few different suspension setups. Things like the SE and XSE hybrids will have a sport-tuned suspension. Those sport models will offer a little bit more composure, and they really don't sacrifice comfort. There's also the off-road trims that will give you a softer ride over lighter imperfections, according to Toyota. And the TRD Off-road takes the suspension changes further on paper. Now, when it comes to towing, the CX-50 will have a leg up because the RAV4 can tow 3,500 pounds, but only in the adventure and TRD Off-road because they have transmission coolers and upgraded alternators. Whereas with the CX-50, all the turbo models tow 3,500. Though when it comes to reliability, I may lean towards the RAV4. The CX-50 has not been out long enough for me to make a very solid prediction there, but we need to remember that the 2.5 liter and 2.5 liter turbo have been used in Mazda products for quite some time, and both, in combo with the 6-speed auto, are very robust. Without going into detail, the CX-50 seems to only suffer from some miscellaneous quality control issues so far. The RAV4 had a somewhat rocky start to the generation, but has sorted out its issues, including a big one related to the hybrids in northern climates here recently. The Toyota does have direct and port fuel injection to keep the intake valves clean, and unlike the naturally aspirated Mazda, it does not have cylinder deactivation, something a few other brands have struggled with. Really, if reliability is a high priority to you, I would feel comfortable recommending both the RAV4 and the CX-50. When it comes to active safety tech, all of them do have autonomous braking, adaptive cruise, lane departure prevention, but the RAV comes with lane centering standard, whereas you have to get the top spec CX-50 for that, and it only works up to 40 miles per hour. Mazda really doesn't care much about driving aids, but all CX-50s have blind spot monitoring to help combat the window size. When it comes to crash tests, the Mazda did a little bit better in the IIHS's updated crash tests. After exploring both of these and taking them for a drive, I think both are going after the exact same sort of customers, but doing it in a different way. The RAV4's soft, easy-to-drive nature and its wide variety of configurations handily earns it more broad appeal. But outside of the giant cargo area, it doesn't hold a functionality advantage, and it certainly lags behind on features for the money. For once, when I compare a Mazda to something else, the answer isn't get the other one if you want a good back seat. These both can fit the same lifestyles. The CX-50 is also a step above when it comes to cabin luxury, and it has a more substantial feel on well-maintained roads. For that reason, I'm going to label the CX-50 as my personal choice between these two. And it's my recommendation to those that need more practicality than the CX-5, but still want some zest behind the wheel. However, I think the RAV4's less polarizing tech, visibility, and more civilized ride quality make it the choice I'd recommend to more people. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, then leave a like to help me dazzle the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe and hit the bell for more to help me take this channel to new heights. Follow me on Patreon for an additional podcast. I'll catch you in the next one.